Continue now with our ongoing series answering your questions about the COVID-19 pandemic. Fox 12's Simon Gutierrez is live in Northeast Portland today with the latest installment. Hi, Simon.
Yeah, hi. With the governor's mask policy going into effect tomorrow, we have a lot of questions about that. First up tonight, how will that policy be enforced?
So Crystal says, I noticed a lot of adults and kids not wearing face masks. Do businesses not have to enforce the mask mandate?
Our approach is, and our expectation of employers is that they will engage visitors and guests at their establishments about the need to wear a facial covering. When we're starting to talk about enforcement, often what we're looking at is if we receive a complaint, you're probably going to start with a phone call and inquiry to the employer about what's being done to address the complaint. And that's before we would ever talk about an on-site inspection. If it got to the point, if we did not receive a credible reply when we engage, or we had some sense that the employer was perhaps willfully essentially saying they were not going to follow the requirements. But there are situations that would prompt an inspection, and so we would go from there.
It sounds like the governor's order allows an exception for people with medical conditions and or disabilities. What's your understanding about how that should work?
Best practice in that case, so when you're doing that engagement, as folks are coming, approaching the establishment, coming into the entrance, what you would want to see, a good practice there would be to, again, politely, you would remind of the facial covering requirement. You would also, if the person says that they have such a health condition and therefore an exemption, you could certainly politely ask whether they do have that exemption if they initially refuse. And if they say that they do, then no further inquiry at that point would be made.
So, Simon, in terms of enforcement, will OSHA actually be handing out fines for noncompliance?
And not to people individually, but potentially to businesses and that can generate complaints and then don't appear to be changing their behavior in response to OSHA's initial phone call. And depending on the severity of the violation, they could be fined anywhere from $100 to more than $100,000. We do have more questions to get to tonight, coming up at 5. A question about the role of the ongoing protests in the increase in COVID-19 cases. We'll see you then.